Welcome to Second Serving, the podcast where back-of-the-napkin ideas become standout food brands. I'm Tanya Rahman, award-winning restaurateur turned venture capitalist and angel investor. Someone who believes your next big pivot might just be one brilliant recipe away. Today, I'm joined by Martin Holden-White, founder and CEO of GRUBBY, the UK's leading 100% plant-based meal kit brand, and a brilliant example of what it looks like to scale with soul. GRUBBY has sold over 2.5 million meals, served more than 100,000 customers, and now brings in circa £5 million in annual revenue. What started as a vending machine operation in 2019 is now available nationwide, not just through their direct-to-consumer subscription model, but also their ready meals. They've earned accolades from The Grocer, Retail Times and Wellbeing magazine, and continue to innovate with science-backed wellness initiatives like the Plant Points menu, helping customers improve gut health by eating 30 different types of plants a week. Martin's also been named a Great British Entrepreneur of the Year finalist and has struck up partnerships with global food brands such as Bosch, Leon and Simplicity Foods. But Martin's not chasing hyper-growth at all costs. In a world obsessed with scale, he's proving that building a values-driven, customer-first brand can be just as powerful. In our conversation, we dive into how GRUBBY grew by staying small, smart and intentional, from first mover advantage to competing with deeper pocketed incumbents, and talk about the state of the UK funding climate specifically for direct-to-consumer and how to lead with principles in a very crowded market. Welcome to Second Serving. Hello, Martin. Welcome to Second Serving.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for being here. Yeah, good. You too. Martin, before we kick off, introduce yourself. If I met you at a party, how would you describe yourself?
I'm Martin Holden-White. Probably wouldn't say my surname at a party, but
double-barreled is strong.
Yeah. So I'm founder of GRUBBY. We're a plant-based meal kit business, and we deliver meal kits, so all the pre-portioned ingredients that people need to cook up healthy dinners at home. And we deliver those in a D2C format, so direct to people's homes, and they can order them online in an e-commerce environment. So we've been going 5 years now, which is pretty crazy. It's absolutely flown by. Going back, I started as a chef when I was 16 part-time, and kind of got lured into the food industry, I suppose. And sort of been in and around it ever since. Before I started GRUBBY, I'm 34 now. I did hospitality and business at university, and then sort of several jobs in between, in sort of contract catering, restaurants, hotels, did a bit of time on a cruise ship in my placement year, various different things. But that's kind of my background, I suppose.
Yeah, it's incredible because you and I actually know each other for the past few years, actually. Mm-hmm. And I've always admired your background. Like as you mentioned, you started as a chef and a bartender, which is actually I think one of the hardest professions going in an industry that is actually, sometimes can be not very rewarding at times.
Yeah.
So take us back to the early days, what was the aha moment for you to start GRUBBY, moving away from direct hospitality to actually building your own brand?
Yeah, the food industry, for anybody starting out in a career is a really, food and hospitality in general is such a good career path, because whatever you go and do after that, people who've worked in bars and restaurants, if I look at a CV, I actually do look for that, because it's often a sign of somebody who's got a bit of grit and determination, that they've lasted a job in a restaurant or in a hotel, and those busy environments where it's really customer facing. It probably means they're quite good with people, that type of thing. But going back to your question, the way I got into GRUBBY was when I left university, I went and worked as a sales manager for a contract catering business called Back to Story. So they catered for offices in big corporate environments, universities. I'd be the person that would effectively sell those solutions. So whether it might be Goldman Sachs would want all of their cafes and restaurants and vending machines and everything doing, and I would figure out what that solution was going to look like. And it was actually, I started on the grad program for that business, but it was a really interesting way of getting exposure to different elements. I'd previously like worked in hospitality environments but hadn't been on the sort of sales side of it, and then that taught me like a lot about, okay, how does a P&L get formed for these sorts of things? How do we staff it? How do we like produce all the menus and everything? So I got sort of both sides to it. Like prior to that, I'd kind of worked in frontline hospitality roles, started as a waiter and bartender, and then like worked as like a supervisor and a manager of like a restaurant and various events and stuff, and that's where I got the sort of frontline experience. And then the sales role really taught me like more about the financial aspects. And then GRUBBY came about I think I'd worked for Backstory for about 5 years, and that's when the idea for GRUBBY and the eureka moment came of, okay, people are leaving the office, they want something healthy. I was thinking like Tesco Express and all these different like small supermarkets are like super expensive. Like how can we make the post-work experience a bit easier? So the original idea was basically vending machines for recipe kits. That was where it started. Pitched that internally at Backstory. In the end, I sort of figured that was not their business, like, and I needed to do this myself if I really wanted to do it. And then, basically just handed in my notice and said, I'm going to go and do this. And started like cobbling together some recipes in my flat and kitchen at home. Developed like a vending sort of smart fridge, basically, that you could scan a QR code, grab a recipe out of it. Got that into like an office, and then that was when COVID hit. So the whole thing changed. So, but that was where it kind of began, and that was where the roots were planted. And on a personal level, I'd kind of started to eat a lot more plant-based food, reduce my meat intake, and I was like, this is just hard. Like, and that's where it became plant-based, because it was kind of like, well, I want to eat more healthily and eat less meat. And but even as someone who had some experience in the kitchen, I was thinking, this is just difficult, and I was thinking of all of my friends and they who don't have as much experience in the kitchen, thinking, surely this has got to be a problem lots of people have got.
Going back to when you handed in your notice, like, what made you think, actually, did you have like any doubts that this might not work out? Are you doing the right thing? Or were you just completely, without a doubt, this is going to work?
Yeah, it's weird to like think back to that time, because like it's probably a really good time to do it, because I was naive, I was younger. I was probably I guess would have been like 26 or something, but had like a little bit of experience. But I mean, I can only describe the feeling as just like something that was like just niggling away in my brain that I just couldn't get rid of. And I just describe it as like gut feel of just like, I couldn't have carried on doing that job at the time, and I knew that I would regret it if I didn't do it. And like there was a point where I just sort of thought, well, I'm just going to regret not leaving this corporate environment for the rest of my life if I don't at least try. And like, it was sort of like, what's the worst that can happen? And I would say that to like anybody that's whatever stage in life they're at, if they've had kids and they're like thinking, oh, they want to go down the entrepreneurial route, then even it's sort of like, what is the worst that can happen? It's like, you go back to the job that you're doing and hopefully you got a job. It's like, usually there's a fallback, and you could lose a bit of money and you could lose some of your savings or something, but realistically, what's the worst that can happen?
You know what, I completely echo that, and I really live by that as well, even now. And when I think back to when I started my restaurants, it was 100% that mentality. It's like, it's almost a way, naivety is that like powerful in a way, because you're so naive. Like, you do have that view of what could go wrong, and if it does, oh well, it doesn't really matter. Totally. I've got time on my side, touch wood, and the money aspect is probably the biggest thing that puts a lot of people off starting. It's like, well, they can lose money, and especially in the climate now where there's lots of financial scarcity, it's like it becomes even more of a risk. But when you're young and in your early 20s, it's like, well, hopefully you'll make that back in your future life. So
and it is, obviously there is a level of risk to it, and it's when it comes to funding and stuff, you can only go so long, depending on what finances you've got yourself and savings and whatever. It's like, for some people, they have got a limited time span, and I gave myself a time span. I sort of said to myself that I could probably last a year. That was sort of what I said in my head. I was like, okay, and that gives you like some form of incentive to go, right, this is the amount of time I've got, and I need to get XYZ done by that point. And if that's not happening, then, you know, you then park it. And that's sort of what I did with myself, is like, right, if I haven't got these things done by the end of this year, then I've got to go back to having a normal job. And that really gives you, you know, that push to get stuff done.
Yeah, definitely. So go back to when you handed in your notice, like how did you fund the business then? Because I presume vending machines aren't cheap.
Yeah. I mean, I basically had, I don't mind sharing, I probably had like 30k of savings at that point, and pretty much put all of that into it at that stage. So, you know, that gave me a bit of a buffer. And then the sort of early stages of the funding, so I worked on all the recipes in my flat. Like, we didn't actually launch anything for about 10 months. And then obviously in the early stages, you're not getting anywhere near enough revenue in to do anything like profit wise and take anything away. But then we did get an Innovate UK grant early on, which is like a government-led grant scheme for certain types of businesses. Very, very competitive, but we failed the first time we went for an application for it. Second time we got 100k. And it was a massive moment, and that was actually wrong order. The first thing was an angel investment ticket of 100k, so they came in quite quick succession, and the angel, who is still on our cap table now, is one of our largest investors, has followed on multiple times, really big support advisor and whatnot, sits on the board, and that was a sort of chance encounter at an entrepreneur network where they do like a Dragon's Den style pitch on like an annual basis, called the Supper Club, and it's changed to Helm now. You might have heard of them, HELM. So pitched at that, got fortunate, chased him, you know, several times in those early moments of meeting up, and then, you know, getting him involved, and he took a, you know, pretty decent stake of the business at that point. And, you know, for other people looking, it's like you are realistically going to be looking at between like 15 and 25% when you're giving away that first ticket, especially if you haven't got much traction. And, you know, that seems like a hefty amount at that stage, but I still don't regret that now. Looking back, I think that was like an important decision. And I obviously at the time tried to like negotiate, and he was just like, no, this is it, take it or leave it kind of thing. So yeah, that's you know, a piece of advice I give is, when you're getting those early people involved, they're taking a massive risk in putting their hard-earned cash on the table. And, you know, if you haven't got much traction, you haven't got much room for manoeuvre in those early stages.
And picking your early investors, like the angel that you mentioned, is critical really to like the boom or bust of the business. Like, you're bringing on people that are essentially going to take, like you said, large equity stakes, but also maybe drive decision making as well. Like, how did you balance that then in the first instances? I
mean, when I did it, there was probably about 9, this Supper Club pitching event, there was about 9 people that I met up with after that. There's something like 12 or 15 of them around this table, walked in with my bag of ingredients and you know, pitched it, and I had follow-up meetings with 9 or 10 of them, and there was 1 or 2 others that seemed really interested, but to be honest, like, I just felt like I had like a real connection with Rob, and that's all I could say really, is just, you just got to sense it. You know, if you don't get good vibes from somebody, you know, it's probably not going to go well in the long term. And much as it can be really tempting, and sometimes people don't have a choice, and there's definitely, you know, that is very much something that can happen. You know, if you've got investment at the table and there's no other option, but you don't feel like you gel with them, ultimately, you know, sometimes you've got to take the money. But in my situation, I was lucky that I really got on with him and felt a really strong connection on like a sort of friendship, personality level, that I felt like I could get stuff done with this guy. So
brilliant. And I actually want to talk about your fundraising journey, because you and I actually met like a few years ago when you were essentially pitching to myself and the fund that I was at the time. So, and I know that you've been quite vocal, especially in a recent article, about not chasing hyper growth at all costs. So, I'd love to, like, you know, dive into that a bit more, because you and I both know that the fundraising environment, particularly like for direct-to-consumer food brands, has just shifted massively, particularly like post-COVID, where we did see like a big boom in like delivery-first concepts, you know, like Deliveroo, IPOing, etc. But now the sentiment has really shifted in the investment landscape as well. Like, profitability is the main focus, improvement in like unit economics, which for D2C brands is like highly critical. So
Yeah.
just, love to hear from you, like how has that shifted like your business model and your strategy?
Yeah, definitely. It's probably quite a lot to cover here. I mean, summary is that we've raised just over 6 million to date, across several rounds. I don't even know what you call the rounds, and people get obsessed with like Series A, B, C, whatever letters. I'm not even sure where we're at, but we as I said, raised an angel ticket at the beginning. We did that with grant funding, and then we went on to do 2 crowdfunding rounds. And a note for sort of any sort of wannabe founders, crowdfunding is in some ways a bit of a myth, in the sense that you need to do a lot of the work prior to going live, and you need to get angels part of that round prior to going live. And a lot of people, when they look at crowdfunding, they go, oh, you've raised $1 million in just under a few hours. It's like, obviously that didn't happen in a few hours. That for us, that first round took about 6 or 7 months to pull together those pre-investors that effectively, when you go live, you put that money into that crowdfunding round. And that's why it's called crowdfunding, because it's then the crowd get onto that momentum of what you've already built up before you put it out on crowdfunding. So yeah, those 2 rounds were about a year apart, and then after that, I think we'd raised about 3 million by that point. We got a VC in Love Ventures, who came on board, London-based VC, and alongside one other sort of super angel who came in early on as well. But going back to your sort of point on the sort of hyper growth, I think we got to a stage where more recently we were looking to do a larger round. This was about 18 months ago. We were looking to do a larger round, couldn't raise it, couldn't get the VC funding. The VC environment had massively changed. It felt like VC had sort of become almost like private equity and sort of really lowered their risk profile. They were not going after businesses like ours. Plant-based was, not in a good state. D2C in general wasn't really in a good state. It meant that they were really, really strict on their metrics and were just looking for a way lower risk profile than we could sort of offer. Figured out that probably just in time that we were just never going to raise. There was a point where I was like, okay, I can take some no's, but this is getting ridiculous. Spreadsheet of 150 lines long of different VCs and just not getting anywhere. So it was like a worrying time because we were running out of cash. We had burn rate was quite excessive at that point, probably burning about 200k a month, and wasn't looking good. Just got to a point where it's like, okay, we can't carry on like this. This has got to stop. And then we got together as a senior team and got together with our sort of core investors. We made a plan as a senior team to put to them of like, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to strip it back to basics. And this is how we're going to get the business to profitability. And basically, we had a really honest conversation with all of our investors, and got them all around the table. It was quite a sort of nerve-wracking day, really, because it was kind of like, this is it kind of thing. We just sort of had to say to them, look, this is the situation, full transparency, full openness on what the finances were looking like, and said, does everyone want to be on this, bus or not, really? Some people didn't, some people did. And got around 8 of our cap table investors to come in. They got a very good valuation. Some people obviously got heavily diluted, the ones that didn't get involved. That's how we kept the business alive, really. We're in a much more stable place now, and it's really liberating as a founder to kind of feel like you've managed to like turn the dial a little bit and not be over reliant on investment, because it's a scary place to be and it's a very stressful place to be.
Incredible. That's incredible. Well, congratulations. I mean, it's no mean feat to be like profitable, particularly like for a D2C brand as well. So like, good for you. So,
getting there.
So with that in mind, then I guess, is that changing your long-term strategy of where you take the business? Because you're not just direct to consumer like delivery brand, but you're also in Tesco's as well, which you launched were in Tesco's a few years ago. So talk me through, because I think when I met you, you were just about to go into Tesco's. Why are you no longer in Tesco's? Was that a decision that you made, or?
So retail is definitely something we know still kind of interested in at some stage potentially. It was a funny one because it was actually like a bit, roles were kind of reversed. Like Tesco actually approached us because they were interested in doing meal kits and plant-based in the supermarkets. They wanted to do like a sort of test run of it. Meal kits have been tried and tested in supermarkets by most of the sort of main brands. HelloFresh, Gusto, Mindful Chef had their ready meals in Waitrose as well. So there's been some efforts to do it, and fundamentally, like, we found that from a supply chain logistics perspective, it was really, really challenging because it's a fresh product. It had to be treated like sandwiches or sushi kind of thing when it got into supermarkets, and it was not quite being treated that way. It was slow to get onto the shelf. It struggled to get through to the supply chain quickly enough on like the supermarket side. Probably a bit of a combination of like the two parties, like, you know, not quite getting the solution where it needed to be, which meant that there was high wastage. Like sales were good, but wastage was quite high, and so that was sort of the challenge. And so yeah, we might try it again when like we've sort of figured out that side of things, but it was a bit of a mutual sort of breakup, I suppose, of we did it for around 9 months, and then, you know, decided that it wasn't quite right at that stage, and we just said let's park this and maybe look at doing something in the future. You know, so we basically said we're going to focus all our efforts on D2C, on our meal kits, and then fast forwarding a bit to kind of like present is we're about to launch, and maybe when this goes live we will have launched, hopefully, ready meals. So that's really exciting.
Where can we get your ready meals?
They'll be in D2C environment as well, so they'll be on our website to get delivered, and people will be able to get them with their meal kits or ready meals in isolation. So the focus on them is that they're going to be like super healthy and wholesome and you know, full of plant points, so that people, you know, if they a couple of nights a week they want to cook, and then another night of the week they want to have a lazy night in front of the TV or whatever, then they'll be able to sort of do both with Grubby whilst remaining healthy. So that's where we're at now, and that's the sort of, I guess, the first time since we consolidated that we've like looked to a new avenue of you know, where we can grow incrementally in like a new direction with our product, which was always the intention of sort of growing our product portfolio to not just be meal kits. Meal kits being the sort of engine room of it, but then expanding into like other plant-based categories and products to cater for more meal times, whether that be breakfast, lunch, snacks, blah blah blah. So that's like our first step on that since we sort of had that, you know, reset period from a funding point of view.
It's like Grubby 3.0. I just love how you keep pivoting, bending the foods to meal kits to now this. Is amazing. I want to, like, you know, talk about when you touched upon, like, you've spoken to like 150 plus investors, and a lot of them obviously shutting the door. I guess like the biggest comparison and pushback you get is that, you know, meal kits is quite a crowded space, particularly in the UK. You know, you've got the likes of Gusto, HelloFresh, etc. Like, how is Grubby differentiating? Because obviously those brands also offer vegan products. So I mean, what would you say to that? I mean, we had this conversation when we spoke, I think, probably, and it's a question we get asked a lot. And, you know, fundamentally, I've always believed that there's space for niches in any sector. Niches can become very mainstream in whatever the product category is. Like plant-based, you know, although from an investment perspective, you know, there's been obviously a lot of pushback on kind of like, you know, meat alternatives not quite kicking off in the way that they expected, and same's happened in sort of other sectors as well. I think one thing I would say about plant-based is that, you know, the movement towards people eating less meat has never wavered. You know, the stats on people eating less meat, you know, continue to like improve every year, and like the next generation of like younger people coming through are eating less meat, and so, you know, from a general trend shift, that isn't going anywhere. And, you know, ultimately meal kits has stood the test of time as like an overall sector. Yes, we're like one of the smaller players in that sector right now, and like, you know, hats off to like Gusto, HelloFresh, Mindful Chef for like getting to where they've got to. Plant-based is our like full focus. That's like where we put all of our energy. The others don't, you know, yes, they offer vegan options, but, you know, people come to us because they know that we're like the kind of like authority on plant-based. You know, they know that
they're going to get a really filling, satisfying meal that's been really thought about in terms of the ingredients that we use. They're more premium, they're more interesting. Like, you know, that's where we're like going after. But I'd also say that we're definitely not trying to go after just vegans. Like, when we've done surveys, we do 2 every year now of over 500 people, which we incentivize to like get the responses, like with a donation to charity. And always, like, our customer base has remained 60% plus non-vegan. And, you know, so the majority of our customers are people that are just trying to reduce their meat intake, remain healthy. And, you know, we've always really focused on making sure that our like portion sizes are really good, that people are getting like a wholesome meal, that they don't feel like they could have done with a bit more, which is often the feedback on plant-based. But also now, like, as I said, with ready meals, trying to expand our like product range, that people can come to us to just, you know, have a healthy lifestyle, like, you know, vegan or not. And that's the sort of long-term ambition, is to people come to us to, you know, get their ready meals, get their meal kits, in future, like, get more products from us, which we've now got like a marketplace where they can buy other branded vegan products from us as well, which sits alongside the meal kits. So that's the like long-term kind of vision, is that we're like a one-stop shop for all your like plant-based needs, whether you're vegan or not, to just pack, you know, more nutrition into your diet. And brand is a big part of that. You know, we tried to like create a brand which is, you know, it's not like it's not got chef in the title, it's not got plants in the title. It's like it's a brand in isolation, that like packs a punch, and that's not having a dig at people that do have those names in their title, but we've tried to, you know, create something that's very standalone and that can lend itself to different product types.
Yeah. Talking of brand, actually, it's quite a decisive name, GRUBBY, actually. So I don't know if you've had, because I remember when you first pitched to us, actually, in the investors in the boardroom at the time were like, love him, don't like the name. It sounds like, I don't know, some soil company, right? Where did the inspiration come from the name? Do you get that a lot as well?
I mean, we when we originally pitched the name, like, the branding agency we still work with now, like, talked about the sort of special wrongness and, you know, deliberately like trying to catch, you know, people off guard and create noise around it. And to be honest, like, just you saying that, it's like that for me is like the brand kind of like doing its job in a way of, you know, maybe they weren't sure about the name, but it definitely got talked about. And you know, it's done its job, I think, over time in really creating like a lot of noise around the business. And I mean, from a, you know, what it sort of stands for, the name GRUBBY is like designed because it's a very clean looking brand, but the name itself is obviously like a bit dirty in a way. And like the cooking experience is naturally messy, like fresh veg straight from the ground, like wholesome ingredients that, you know, when you're picking veg out of the ground, you're getting like grubby, mucky hands, and same in the kitchen, that it's like a naturally messy experience. So that's what like the name is like playing into, but then all the branding and everything where we use it is very black and white, very clean, and yeah, that's sort of, you know, I guess what it kind of like stands for in a way. But yeah, as a name and as a brand, it's you know, it's done a lot of work for us when it comes to creating, you know, positive, negative, everything in between kind of sentiment towards it when it comes to like ads and paid social and that type of thing.
Yeah, and it works because you're right. There's a juxtaposition between the word and how clean your branding is as well. Yeah, so I love that. You actually, so you, like I said, we've known each other for a while, but you actually are one of the founders that I recall as having, if I had to have a rating, like a grit rating, you are absolutely up there on the high end. And
thanks.
And I think it's because the industry that you came from, obviously, is from one of the hardest industries going. Yeah. But the fact that you've pivoted this business pretty much like 3 times now since you founded it in 2019, was it? Yeah. Like, that takes something, you know, like, was there ever a moment in those, you know, since then, since you started the business, where you actually thought, yeah, look, I've had enough now. There's no way we can continue, even if there isn't enough money in the bank, or just generally other factors are just so stacked up against you?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I've ever genuinely thought about quitting. I think there's been one or two times where I've thought, deep down, this is pretty close to the wire, and we're in trouble here, kind of thing. And that is really stressful. Mainly when it's a financial, aspect of running out of money, which has happened like probably 3 times at once early on, and then twice quite a while ago now, as I said, pre 18 months ago. But we've come to that point of there really being like very little money in the bank. We've even had early on like times where we had like more invoices outstanding than we've had cash in the bank, which is not even legal probably, but it's a scary time, and it's very stressful. And I think that's where not come close to quitting, but like have gone into that sort of like fight or flight mode of like just like going hell for leather on every single avenue you can possibly explore. Looking back, I was sort of stressed at those points, but you don't necessarily know you are at the time. And it's like, for me, it was like quite a physical feeling of tight chest, that sort of thing, and very much internalizing it. I think it is, stress is one of those things you don't necessarily appreciate at the time, but I do think that when there's opportunities to take breaks, it's super important to do that, because there is no way that like being this sort of founder that people think all founders are, of just like always being on, it's not sustainable. You can only do it for a certain period of time, and you just got to be committed to taking like the breaks that you need to, and also ensuring like your team get breaks and have like necessary holiday and take time off and all that sort of thing, because I do really think that it affects how people work. Like stressed people are never going to do good work. They're going to make bad decisions, and it's just not healthy. You've probably felt it, as you said, with the restaurant business, that when you're at that sort of peak kind of always like tight and you just don't make like proper decisions.
But with building a business, you're almost forced to become like the captain of the team, right? Where there's nothing wrong in saying it's not everybody's strength. Like, how was it for you? Was that a role that you naturally kind of fell into? Or
I do enjoy like managing the team, and like definitely get a sort of kick out of seeing people like grow like within their roles. That's definitely a big part of like the motivation for me, is like seeing everyone like change over time and delivering more for the business and everything, and taking on like sort of small leadership roles. Like early on, like I did a lot of like summers out of university, I'd go and work for an events business for the whole summer and be a restaurant manager for them, turning up at different events, whether that be like the Open Golf or Royal Ascot or the Commonwealth Games, and basically being a manager for a restaurant, or the Commonwealth Games, it was a number of different food vendors in the stadium, and those sorts of like leadership roles, like although they're like relatively minor, they definitely taught me a lot, because you're dealing with lots of different personalities in like quick succession, back to back. And I would definitely say like getting like as much work experience as you can early on in your career is like, for me, was like really, I think, paid off in terms of being able to lead a team, because that was like the experience that I like drew upon, I suppose.
And the team side of things, there's lots of things when it comes to like building your startup that make or break it, but the team is like up there, probably number one.
It's everything.
But people get it wrong. It's very natural to get it wrong, right? Has there been situations where you've made the wrong hire and it's completely derailed the business in a way?
I wouldn't say, we've made a couple of wrong hires that we have subsequently got rid of, but only a couple. And
how quickly did you realise they were the wrong hire? Did it take time?
Fairly quick actually. Okay. Probably not quick enough.
Never is it?
But I think taking gut feel on those things as quickly as you can is really important. And obviously like bad hires can really affect a business, and we fortunately haven't had, to be honest, like any hires where it's like derailed things or made thing's a disaster. But I know that there is, startups where that's happened. And we have been really fortunate. Like, we've actually had, besides those people and, during the sort of consolidation period where we did have to get rid of somebody from not a performance related thing, pretty much everybody else in the team has remained. Our first employee, she moved on after 4 years, but that aside, everybody has been a constant, and so we had a very, very loyal team, and yes, super low turnover. So that's actually been something that I think has actually allowed us to focus, because when you're not focusing on replacing people or hiring people, which is also a problem when you're growing fast, because people just, if the culture's not working and that's not focused on enough, then people will leave. So touch wood, like big time touch wood, everyone could leave tomorrow and we'd have a bit of a problem. But that's been something that I think has saved us time and allowed us to crack on.
Yeah, that's quite rare actually, to still have one of your first employees still stay on after all this time, and speaks to you and the culture that you're building internally with Grubby. Was that something that was at the forefront of your mind, to have more of a culture-led strategy as opposed to I
think probably early on, no. In the first, well, at least I didn't think about it, to be honest. In the first year, 2 years, I didn't really give much thought to culture. And then there was a point, I can't really think when, but where I went, actually really got to spend some time on doing good stuff and putting some nice things in place for the team, and just creating that culture. And I do think that's also important when you're hiring the early hires, because they do define and create the culture. And I think I realized that particularly probably the very first hire, she and one or two others really helped define that culture of not taking life too seriously in the business, and allowing people to be themselves and completely their authentic selves, and to speak up, and for everybody to have a voice in team meetings and stuff. And that for me is one of the biggest things, is if people can't speak up and they don't feel like they can speak truth to power, then nothing is ever going to get done in a way which is right. So everyone should feel like they can challenge anything. That's one of my key philosophies.
Love that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we are going to end today's chat with a quick fire round, which we always ask everyone that comes on the show. So firstly, the show is called Second Serving.
Yeah.
So which dish then, Martin, would you always go in for a second serving for, and why?
Big question. I mean, it's got to be a grubby dish. As a quick dish, I'd always go for the carbonara. It's so simple. A vegan carbonara is essentially cashews, oat cream, nutritional yeast, soy sauce, in a blender, bit of lemon juice, blitz it up, and you've got a great cashew, based creamy sauce. And then depending on how much time you've got, bit of pasta on the boil, something, you could sling in some mushrooms, spinach, whatever, and you've got a really easy, quick weeknight dinner. That's probably the thing that I'd if I'm in a rush, that's a quick one to whip up.
What about the shepherdless pie? I know that's popular.
It's good, but it does take a bit longer.
Yeah.
It's just one of those, a bit more indulgent. But yeah. I'd probably, if I was in a rush, I'd probably go for the carbonara.
Oh, nice. Okay. And if I went on the Grubby website today, could I order the carbonara?
Probably. It's quite a mainstay on the menu. So yeah, there's versions of it in different forms.
Okay, I'm definitely going to try that out. And finally, to everyone that's listening to this and has that niggling feeling that you did of starting their own food business, what one piece of advice would you give them to just start?
Yeah. I mean, I'd say that the biggest thing is that failure is par for the course. Failure and taking no's and things going wrong are absolutely par for the course, and it's just you've just got to somehow take those things in your stride and understand that there's better times ahead, because at the time it doesn't feel like that, but at the beginning particularly, in a food business, getting sort of minimum order quantities out of suppliers and those types of things are always so challenging. But being able to just accept that things going wrong, taking those, for investment, that type of stuff is all what is just very likely to happen, and anything better than that is a bonus. And just having that mentality of things will get better, I think is really, really important.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like if you're not having no's and it's not going right, then you're not doing it right.
Not pushing yourself or challenging yourself enough.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I love that.
Agree.
Thank you so much, Martin.
Thanks for having me on. It was really, really good chat.
Good. Well, to everyone that's interested in ordering a Grubby, where can they order Grubby from?
Grubby.co.uk, and as I said, we're just about to launch ready meals, so it'd be awesome for people to give those a try. We've also just published a book a few months ago with penguins, so there's a recipe book that, Christmas is a great present as well, so I'm sure that will roll around. But yeah, grubby.co.uk is where you can get your hands on it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Martin.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.